The following program is presented by the Metropolitan Library Service Agency.
Hello, welcome to All About Kids, a program focusing on the interests of children and young people and some of the issues affecting them. War and peace, response to the Persian Gulf crisis are certainly issues affecting the children and adults of Minnesota. Our guests today, Barb Smith, Sandy Brovold, and Carol Johnson, are activists and organizers in the Military Family Support Network. They'll be talking about the organization and how they personally are working to convey the message that peace is an alternative in the Gulf crisis. Carol, Sandy, Barb, delighted to have you here today on All About Kids. We're here to talk about an issue of really crucial importance, I think. You are all members of the Military Family Support Network, and we're going to be talking about your organization and what it is doing to get the citizens of Minnesota and people across the country interested and active in what is going on now in January of 1991 in the Persian Gulf. Carol, you're the co-chair of Military Family Support Network in Minnesota. How did you get involved, and tell us a little bit about the organization, please.
Okay, the organization was an outgrowth of concern to echo Alex Molnar's letter to the president. When his son was sent overseas, he became immediately concerned that the American military was being used for a purpose that he did not endorse and didn't think that the rest of the country did either. And I think that there was an outpouring across the country of similar concern. The way I got involved was I had immediately felt the same way when my son was mobilized to the Persian Gulf in August, and I wrote a letter to the president at that time, and I was talking with a co-worker who we were discussing what to do, what kind of action we could take, and I said that I had heard this letter read that Alex Molnar had written, and she said, well, why reinvent the wheel? Why don't you call them up or write them and see if there is something that they're doing that you could do also? And so I did write to Professor Molnar. And after a couple of months, after he collected all of the names and addresses of people who felt similarly, he organized the Military Family Support Network and recruited me in Minnesota to be the chairperson for the area.
And you're busy recruiting other people. Has there been a tremendous outpouring of support for the organization?
There has. We're getting calls every day, and the national office gets calls and funnels the names through to us. And we're organizing in that I now have a co-chair. Nick Grenath, who is a member of the military himself, is my co-chairperson, and we have district chair people also, of which Sandy and Barb, I'm sorry, I'm meeting Barb face to face for the first time today, our district organizers also.
Sandy, how did you get involved?
Well, when our son found out that he was going to be shipped to Saudi, he had been stationed in Germany for about a year, and we were expecting him to be home for Christmas, and as happened to a lot of families, those orders were canceled, and he left the 29th for Saudi. But when he told us about this, we immediately activated because we felt the same concerns, and we had already received copies of Professor Molnar's letter and had responded to that. We have a very active group in St. Peter called Concerned Citizens for a Peaceful Solution. And one of those people are my son's former pastor that's on that committee. And so we had seen Carol up at a teach-in at the U of M, and she had called us after that, and we became the directors for District 2.
But I understand your son had some grave concerns or reservations about this whole effort. That
yes, he did.
Even as a member of the military, he thinks there is
He had asked
wrong.
us to write the Congress and the President months before it had, before we were in an offensive nature at all, when we were just defending Saudi ground, he had asked us to write. And so we had no qualms at all. We knew that this is what we had to do, that we had to activate. And so we've been as involved as possible in
Did
writing
he have a
Congress.
sense that a lot of other people in the military were also opposing this current effort?
Absolutely. He couldn't understand why we were there, and he said everyone on his base didn't understand either why we were going. The way they see it, quite honestly, is that it's a war over oil. And if you ask any elementary child, they will tell you that it's a war over oil. And like my son said, when he decided to sign up, yes, he would defend this country for our moral principles, for our democracy, but certainly he was not a hired gun. And I think that's how we've been feeling.
Carol, your son had a little bit different reaction, or has had a different reaction, I understand.
Yes, he has. We're coming from a different place in that, I think. My son, when he initially called and told us that he was going, was fearful, was I could tell personally, really stricken by the thought of going to war and of having to do the things that he would be asked to do in war. But he did not express any kind of opinion over being sent there, the reasons for going or where he was going. And as time went on, we had a hard time coordinating communication between us, and as I was becoming more and more convinced that I needed to get involved in some of the peace efforts, or the putting the brakes on the action in the Middle East, he was, I think, becoming more and more acclimated to his circumstances there, and finally we got to the point where we could talk on the phone and actually discuss what I was doing and how he felt about what he was doing. And at that point he was saying, it's fine, Mom, for you to do what you're doing, and I know that you're doing it out of conviction. He said, but please don't construe that the troops over here are not ready, or that we are cowards. He says we will do what we're ordered to do, and we're strong, and we're ready, and our morale is good, and don't let anyone think it's not. And I said, yes, that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying in any way that you want to get out of there personally.
I think that's one of the most positive things that is coming out of your organizations and some of the organizations that are working this. There is not a criticism of the men and women in the military. It's a criticism of a policy that has put us in this position. Now, Barb, you don't have a child in the military or a young person in the military, but you are a teacher and you're working on a daily basis. Is that the reason that you got involved in the support network?
Well, it's threefold, really. I'm a mother of 4 daughters, and as such, I doubt that they'll ever enlist in the service, or that we'll have an immediate need to be involved in the military. But I had gone for Parents' Day at Winona State University, and there was a lecture given by a professor from Iraq about the situation, and so it triggered my interest. As I sat there in the audience as a woman, I listened, and the entire discussion was by men, between men, and for men. And I was sitting there thinking, well, you know, the men whom we love are involved in this, but we women are sitting here quietly and not saying anything, or having no vehicle from which to help raise the point. So my consciousness was piqued at that point. And then probably 6 or 7 weeks later, I did read the letter from Professor Molnar to President Bush, and my heart was touched for the families of the service people who are going through this experience. And I wrote back to him just to express my concern and to say if there's anything that a non-military person can do to assist the effort, I would really be happy to help. And probably in my capacity as a teacher in the classroom, maybe I could talk about peace and promote peaceful ideas and discuss a peaceful solution rather than a military option with students. And so in that way I could have some effect, even though I won't be personally involved in the military. So that was how I got involved. At this point, mostly my capacity is to be kind of a disseminator of information and coordinate the information among the network people. And
I'm real interested, though, in your role as a teacher. What do children in the classroom think about this situation? Sandy has a 10-year-old, and obviously this older brother in the service. would have an impact on a 10-year-old. Even children who don't have relatives in the military must be very concerned about what they're seeing on television and must be worried. Are they able to express that to you?
Yes, I work with students who would be from kindergarten through 6th grade. They're very well informed. The teachers in the classroom seem to be doing a very good job about presenting the information in terms of geography, a smattering of the issues and the personalities involved. And I'm aware of many, many classrooms whose job has been to write letters to service people and then get information back. And the children really enjoy that. It gives them it's kind of an empowering thing for the children.
To feel like they're actually doing something to
and
avert
the school
crisis.
that I was in yesterday, their chief engineer was called to active duty over Christmas vacation, and that kind of energized the entire student body, because now they have a personal person over in the Gulf, and so they're able to write letters to this person and express some of their fears, and they use their writing as a vehicle to deal with some of the feelings they have. They're frightened. I know that a lot of parents have a struggle about exactly what to say to these children, so they just don't say anything. So it is up to the classroom teacher a lot.
Do you find, as members of the organization, that parents that you're working with are getting involved are frightened themselves and have to deal with that fear, just like any other adult problem, before they can help their own children?
I talked with one last night. Her husband was a Vietnam vet, and they had decided at that point, should any military thing arise in the future, that they did not want their children to participate in it, but she wants her children to be informed. And so her concern is, how do I inform my children and yet not impart my fears on that child so that they can be objective in how they view the situation? But it's a real conflict for her to try
and put in our library pitch. You can go to your public library. There are a lot of books on peace issues, or even stories that you could use with very young children, and you can discuss issues maybe in not quite such a personal way.
Remembering from my own childhood and the times when I was hearing on the radio stories from the Korean War and even from the Cold War era, I think that to imagine that children are not aware and are not already afraid is a mistake, because I think they are. I certainly was. I never discussed war or peace with my parents, but I had a great fear just from hearing what was going on the news, and I struggled with how to approach that myself with my son in the military, whether my talking about my fears of what would happen over there, or my concern for peace when he was gearing up for war, would be psychologically damaging to him. And I finally came to the conclusion that the best thing I could do was to be honest about what I was feeling.
That's a difficult thing for a parent to do. Is that what you found, Sandy?
Yes, I would have to reiterate very much what Carol is saying. I think what is encouraging, though, is that so many people like Barb, who don't have someone directly involved, are coming forward and voicing and are concerned and are activating other people in a real positive way to support our young men and women over there. And as parents, we certainly appreciate that. I guess we hold to the truth, though, that the best way to support them is not to allow them to go to war.
And your group is not a model and one that's sitting around weeping over letters. You're receiving your activists. You're out there in the community. You are working to get other people involved.
Yes.
What kind of a response are you getting from policymakers, from elected officials? Do you find a warm or at least an interested reception?
In some cases, yes. We are certainly from Paul Wellstone. I'm getting immediate response and very favorable response, and he's right there for our concerns. From others, it hasn't been that good. Some of the representatives have not come forth yet and made statements, and I get very concerned about that, because we're right up against the wire. I understand that on Thursday there's going to be a congressional vote that
Thursday, January 10th of '91.
That's right. Yes, tomorrow, and that at that point they will have to declare themselves one way or another, and it's very frustrating for them not to do that ahead of time. For us, we'd like to know.
And the main thing, of course, that you're interested in doing is getting constituents to contact their congressional delegation, the president,
Absolutely, call them now, because it's crucial that they know how the people are really feeling about this.
Were you activists before? We're all kind of an age. Were you involved in any kind of a protest movement during Vietnam, or a peace movement rather than a protest? Have you
I
been
was busy
political?
raising babies.
Quite honestly, I wasn't really involved. I was always concerned. I had a brother that was in Vietnam, and his life has never been the same, so we realize firsthand what can happen. I think war is just a very terrible thing, and it's something that my son has never believed in. Like I said before, you know, he feels that he has been deceived from the top level of government, that certainly if this country was threatened, that would be one thing, but we feel that we have not been given a good reason to go to war.
I've never been an activist either. During the Vietnam War, I was raising my children and watching television and seeing what was happening. And as I said before, the cloud has always been there ever since I was a child, of wars in different places. But I never had the real impetus to get up and state my feelings about it until now. And
So your very deep personal convictions have given you the courage to go on and kind of try.
Well, I think
It's
we all
not
learned.
easy to chair a state organization when you haven't been involved in something like this before.
Well, we're the generation too, I think, that went through Vietnam, and to see our children being threatened, having to go to fight an unjust war, is something that really hits home, because we all went through that and we know the consequences, and we're still suffering from that war. And so I just see it as being just very unfair, and something that I never thought this country would even think about.
How about the reaction from other people in your community? People who may be more interested in the administration's policy as it stands currently. Are you getting criticized? Are
I'd
there
say
angry words?
maybe 20% of my own family would be supportive of the Bush policies, and they're very vocal in discussing the issues with me. Most of my friends are of a like mind with me, so I would feel that there's more support for a non-military solution to the crisis in the Gulf than there is for a military one.
You're really putting your reputations on the line to go out and be so active and allow so many interviews, and that must put you in an awkward position on occasion. So you feel very strongly.
Yeah, we've received so much support. I mean, we've had people set up tables at our churches and come forward, and people that don't have anyone over there, but they're just helping out in any way they can, and it's been very important to us. For the churches to come out and make such strong statements, and the League of Women Voters even, and we've been asked to be on radio in our community, and you know, they're really seeking us out. So I can't say we've had any negative reaction, but then we do live in a small community. People do know us. So if they felt differently about it, they might not approach us either, in all fairness. But otherwise, you know, all we have is a lot of support.
Well, it seems to me that there's a deep sense of frustration on many, many people in society, no matter what their actual political opinions are, and you offer an alternative. You offer people a way to get involved, and you're asking for something quite reasonable, a peaceful solution to the crisis, rather than a military one, and you are acting in deep good faith, I think.
Well, I felt early that I felt very vulnerable in speaking out, and I felt not having been an activist before, not having that to draw on, taking a firm stand on something. I had a lot of going back and forth in my own mind about the appropriateness of doing it, and I had some not opposition, but some cautions voiced to me in my family and my extended family, because we just haven't been people who spoke out against authority. And so I had just a lot of confusion about that, but I came to the conclusion that I'd rather, when all is said and done, I don't think I can go wrong to come out on the side of peace.
I think anyone can go wrong on something like that. Do you expect that your organization will continue after this mid-January deadline that we're all sort of facing now?
I plan to continue.
I certainly do.
Oh yes, I think it will continue, and Of course, we're all hoping that our efforts are going to culminate in the administration hearing us and beginning to tread more lightly on the road to war, and that things will be turned around and that we will see the troops coming home. But if that doesn't happen, we will continue, and we'll have a new direction, and we will be discussing that when I go to Washington this weekend, this January 15th of 1990, and when it dawns in Saudi Arabia, we will be standing there at a candlelight vigil, and we'll be making plans. If our efforts are not successful in averting war, we'll be moving on.
There will be people all over the country who will be
Oh yes, the
joining in the
organization.
candlelight vigils.
Yes.
Has your organization given any thought to the future and perhaps trying to find ways where young people who, as your son, looking for something, young people who may not be college material but need to find some sort of training, can find it rather than choosing the military as a career?
That's certainly been one thing that I've thought about. There must be something else that can take the place of
And have the same status
of that,
and the same
and have the
public
same
appeal.
intensity for young people that the Army does, because I think that they go in with the feeling that this is going to call forth everything they've got. It's going to be a real test of whether they've got what it takes to become an adult.
When you look at the recruiting commercials, that's it. And you said
That's
your
right.
son went in with a sense of adventure, that this would be something. It's kind of that maturation sort of thing. You go into the military and
Right.
you come back a man rather than a boy, or I suppose a woman rather than a girl.
Well, and I think at that age, your children would like to become a little bit more independent, and certainly the Army offers all these options, and be the best that you can be, and then you come out, and college is more affordable, and you are more independent of your parents, and I think that's a big part of it too. But I think there's a lot of deception there, and I don't think we realize how much the military goes into the high school and actually recruits those kids and what lines they're being sold. I would hope that we would start seeing in our high schools people that actually explain to them about conscientious objection too, because I think that's the other side of it.
Oh yes.
And that's something that we never hear about.
We're going to have to set that up as an alternative for them and just make it as routine as the recruiters getting into the high schools. What the recruiters are telling them right now is, oh yes, sign up, this conflict will be over before you're out of boot camp.
And then you see, I don't think you can see that anymore as being unpatriotic at all, because I think the most unpatriotic thing that we could do is not voice ourselves right now in protest of this, because it could have global consequences, and it would just be devastating, I think. If Saddam Hussein goes ahead with some of the threats that he's made to blow up those oil fields, there would be a cloud of smoke that would be equivalent to nuclear bombs going off. And I was listening to Dr. Sagan talking about this, and I don't know if people really realize that. And how can we trust an administration that says no new taxes one day, and or promises 1,000 points of light, and here we are facing war? It's been so devastating to us, and we feel that there's been so much deception, and I think that is still going on, trying to justify their actions. So I really hope America stands up and voices themselves, whatever side they're on. We need to speak out.
Tremendous social problems that we're facing in our country, and the money being
Yes.
diverted from that into
Yes.
something like this situation. We've only got a little bit of time left. Do you have one last passionate statement that you'd like to make for the audience? And we will put your number on the screen so anyone who's interested can call for more information.
I guess I would just like to say that peace is an option in this situation right now, and it's also an option for us as human beings and as Americans. My military son's brother has filed his card with the Central Committee for Conscientious Objection, and I think that he would not have come to this soul-searching and decision if it had not been for what's going on. But I think that maybe this will galvanize the country to seek options to war and to a warlike culture.
Sandy?
I guess I just would really like to encourage people to come to the peace rallies. I think it's going to take numbers of Americans to overturn what is happening. I don't think we can put our trust in just one man to make these decisions. We have to have Congress debating this and taking a stand on it, but people have to let them know what they're feeling.
Barb?
For me, it would be to model peace in our lives with our children, and perhaps to find materials available to help inform our children. I know there's a lot available in the public library system with alternative viewpoints that perhaps we could educate them.
That's a wonderful note to end on.
Nice idea.
Thank you all very much for being with us today, and good luck in your efforts.
Thank you for the opportunity.
The Big Book for Peace, a book published by Dutton Books in 1990, edited by Ann Durrell and Marilyn Sachs. What an appropriate book for our time, and how timely. Children do struggle with peace issues. Every child has the right to grow up in a peaceful world and to inherit a peaceful land. This is a book that was put together, as it says in the epilogue, at a conference not a very long time ago, when a librarian had remarked that she was concerned that her colleagues were so enthused over a new war book containing numerous photographs of German tanks used during the Second World War. The kids will love this one, somebody said. I'm going to buy multiple copies for my library. Well, what about peace, and what about children that do struggle with peace? There are all kinds of conflicts in children's lives, and some of them they never voice. This is an excellent book to use to bring those things out with your children. It's a group of well-known children's authors and illustrators who have given these contributions to the book. The royalties are going to be donated to many peace organizations, some of them very simple. The Dream by Stephen Kellogg. If everyone has the same dream, it might come true. A Peaceable Kingdom. There is another story in here which is done by Jean Craighead George, The Bird's Peace. I'd like to just read a couple of sentences from that because it is so timely. On the day Christy's father went off to war, she burst out the back door and ran down the path to the woods. Her eyes hurt, her chest burned. She crossed the bridge over the purling stream and dashed into the lean-to she and her father had built near the edge of the flower-filled woodland meadow. That is just the beginning. There are many things in here. This is one of the books on peace that are available from your Hennepin County libraries. Children need to hear these things, read it to them, share it with them. The Big Book for Peace.
The Big Book for Peace, edited by Ann Durrell and reviewed by Mary Wilson Swotosh, librarian at the Oxboro Community Library in Bloomington. Thanks to our guests from the Military Family Support Network, and thanks to all of you for joining us on All About Kids. Please tune in again.
This has been a presentation of Hennepin County Library in conjunction with the Twin Cities Metropolitan Library Service Agency. We thank you for watching, and we hope you visit your public library often.